I want to look at it from the perspective of the person who has dementia. I want to talk about barriers to that communion, barriers to the communication, what gets in the way. And then also, what are we going to do about it to break down those barriers? When I think of the word communication, I think of the word communion, to be together. And I'm here to talk about communication when it involves people who have dementia. That's a pertinent topic for most of you? Okay. You know how so often you don't feel together. You'll explain something, they say, yes, I promise, I will not leave the house. And 5 minutes after you leave, they're out the door. And you think, but I know they understood. I know this person well enough to know they understood. Why did that happen? So I do want to talk about communication and about dementia. And the term you often hear is person-centered, and what that means is to keep in mind that person, because some of the things I'll say today doesn't have anything to do with the person you know, but can we make it, could I come up with some general information that would apply to most everybody with dementia, and we'll see how successful I am. So, where am I aiming? I want to look at it from the perspective of the person who has dementia. I want to talk about barriers to that communion, barriers to the communication, what gets in the way. And then also, what are we going to do about it to break down those barriers? Here's a quote from someone who has Alzheimer's disease. He said, I think one of the worst things about Alzheimer's disease is you're so alone with it. Nobody around you really knows what's going on, and half the time, or most of the time, we don't know what's going on ourselves. You can see how that would make you feel alone if people don't really understand you. Where am I to be pointing? Anyway, can you advance it for me? Another quote, this fella is a pastor who has Alzheimer's. He says, it's so much easier just to stay in the safety of my home than expose myself to people who don't understand, people who raise their eyebrows when I have trouble making the right change at the cash register, or when I'm unable to think of the right words when I'm asked a question. You might ask, well, these quotes are very insightful for someone who has dementia. The person I know wouldn't be able to tell me what's going on. Obviously, these are folks who are early enough in the process that they're mildly impaired. And the next one. I'm still the same person. I just can't do my work anymore. I'm still here. I need your friendship and acceptance. Having Alzheimer's, and actually this was my brother-in-law, having Alzheimer's is like it was in the Vietnam War. 90% of the time you're bored out of your head, followed by minutes and hours of sheer terror. You're confronted with things like, how do I sit down in this chair? You know? So here you were, la la la, living your life, and all of a sudden you're faced with something you don't know how to do. And you're overwhelmed again. And you're frightened. I dislike social workers, nurses, and friends who don't treat me as a real person. And then this one broke my heart when she said it to me. I used to be somebody. You know, the sense of loss. And this one, I know you've heard this one. We've all heard this one. I'm so stupid. You're not stupid. You've got a brain disorder. Oops. So how are older adults different? Not even talking about people with dementia. Just normal aging. How are people different? Well, there's some normal aging memory changes. One is, we're going to pretend my hand is a brain cell. Sorry, I'm a social worker, I'm not a scientist. So I got a brain cell and I've got these dendrites coming off it and an axon, and that connects to the next brain cell. Well, one brain cell connected to the next brain cell is just not as efficient as when you were young. That shouldn't surprise us. Our lungs aren't working as well after about age 45 or so. Your stomach, your kidneys, your liver, you're not as strong as you were when you were 20. Are we really astounded that one brain cell connected to the next brain cell is just not as efficient? And so what we'll often find is that people will have memories from long time ago, back when those connections were efficient. You can remember supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. You can remember all kinds of stuff. But can I remember, and I don't have dementia at this point, as far as I know, can I remember the name of the person I just met? Can I remember where I parked my car? I'm to the point now where when I park my car, maybe I'm at the Kroger, I'll say, I'm by the P from pharmacy, and there's a tree over there. You didn't have to do that when you were young. You immediately absorbed things, you immediately made connections, you understood where you were, and you walked out of Kroger straight to your car. I was so blessed when they came out with those cars that'll sort of beep. Do you remember when Kroger used to send people out with you with your groceries and help you load up your car? I would always say, no, because I didn't want them watching me going up and down the aisles looking for my car. But now I can just discreetly go beep, 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 beep. And I got a 90% chance of finding it. And then there's also what we call a loss of reserve capacity. To have extra reserve, just like you have extra reserve in your stomach and your liver and your kidneys and your lungs when you're young. You've got lots of extra reserve in your brain, in your cognitive abilities. I think of all our body systems as being on like a threshold. It takes this much heart power to get up the stairs. It takes this much cognitive power to get through my days. Well, young people are up here. They've got lots of reserve. As we get older, all humans and animals, and really some plants, have less and less and less reserve, less energy in your cells, a part called the mitochondria, and therefore less energy in yourself. So we have less energy with normal aging, much less if I have some kind of frailty, or if I get like a urinary tract infection and I'm below the threshold, and I was there, I'm now here, and I'm confused. Thanks. And then the other thing about normal aging, and I don't know the science behind this, is you're more distractible. If someone were to come in late now, I would stop talking, because those of you who are over 45 and certainly over 60 would all be like watching them, and then watching them put their things down and stuff like that. You're more distractible. I wonder if that's why they planned this room to be so compact. We don't have windows to watch people going by and things like that. So that's with normal aging. How does that all affect communication? To have less energy, to be more distractible. Well, dementia makes everything worse. You've got damage to your brain. Dementia is about damage. It's brain damage. So your executive functioning, executives run things. So if I want to put together a recipe that I've made for 50 years, and suddenly I can't remember, am I supposed to put 1 cup of flour in there or 2? You know, and in what order? Damage to the hippocampus. The hippocampus is an interesting part of your brain. It's where your reasoning and judgment lie, and your immediate reaction to the world. Well, the Alzheimer's dementia starts in the hippocampus. The other dementias all find their way to the hippocampus. And I realize I've now used the word dementia and I've used the word Alzheimer's. So like, what's the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia? Dementia is the general term. I'm having trouble with my thinking. I'm having trouble with my functioning. But why? This person's having dementia because they got Alzheimer's disease. This person has dementia because they've had some strokes. This person has dementia because they had Parkinson's disease. There's a whole bunch of reasons why you get dementia. And then if you're over 85, there's a really good chance you've got dementia because of 2 things happening. That you've had maybe little mini strokes plus Alzheimer's or something. So the hippocampus is where we do our reasoning and judgment. And I know you've had problems with this, being able to think clearly. If someone gets stressed, the hippocampus gets full of like these stress hormones, they kind of can't think. And now you can't reason. And when I say you've had this trouble too, you got in an argument with somebody once, it was probably about politics, and they seemed to have all the facts and figures, and all you had were your values. And then pretty soon you're like, well, and you can't keep up with their reasoning. And 3 hours later, when the stress hormones will settle down out of your hippocampus, you're like, oh, there's like 4 things I could have said. If only the glucocorticoids hadn't been attaching to the receptors in my hippocampus, I would have come up with these great responses. If Alzheimer's and the other dementias either start in the hippocampus or make their way there, we already have someone who has damaged reasoning. They can't reason. So that common advice you all got, probably the first piece of advice you got was, don't argue with them. Did you have that advice? Arguing is actually a type of reasoning. Like, can't you see such and such and such? And don't you? No, I can't. I got Alzheimer's, okay? I can't reason. So why argue? Why reason with someone who can't reason? Plus, it's hard. It's hard on you, it's hard on them, it's all stressful. So we don't argue with them. And then we also get stress and those stress hormones if we're being asked to do something more than we can handle. For a lot of people, it seems to be bathing. At Memory Lane, probably the call we get most often is, it's been 3 weeks since she's taken a bath. How can I better communicate that we're on the same page? And the bathing just seems to be like it's just like a big deal. I've got to take my clothes off. I've got to do this. There's all this executive functioning that's got to be in this order. And then there's all kinds of thoughts about maybe their skin is sensitive and they're feeling. The bathing thing is still a bit of a mystery, but we try to get through it with good communication. And then, if you feel stress or humiliated, you have a sense of shame, a sense of loss of self. And so if I'm asking them to do something like, you know, it's time to take your bath now, who are you to tell me that I should be taking a bath? And that comes straight out of humility. There's another part of your brain, so the hippocampus, reasoning, judgment. Another part of your brain called the amygdala, where your basic emotions live, like safety, love, fear, and the greatest of all, the one that sends the most stress hormones to the hippocampus, is humiliation. And if a person feels humiliated, now they can't reason, and you start seeing behaviors. What do I mean by behaviors? They might like withdraw and get quiet. They might, get feisty and like, who are you? They might even strike out. They might start crying. When they can't reason because you feel humiliated. Did you do anything wrong? No. People do need to bathe at least every couple weeks, or at least a bird bath or something. You did nothing wrong, but they perceived it as, oh, now she's telling me, now he's telling me, I used to be somebody. I used to be somebody who made those decisions for myself. So even though you did nothing wrong, they feel humiliated. So in our communication and trying to be one with them, we try to make them still feel like a person, like a somebody. And we'll talk about that. This little cartoon is trying to show us back to the Alzheimer's dementia, even though there's a whole bunch of reasons you can get dementia. The picture on the left is trying to show the cross-section of a brain that has lots of healthy tissue. The picture on the left says, this person lost so many brain cells that they even lost brain tissue. I could put my fingers right down into the sulci of that. Well, who isn't going to have trouble thinking when you've lost so much of your brain, and especially that outer portion where a lot of the higher functioning is, and the hippocampus, which is down there. I get teased at work because I'm always talking about the hippocampus and hippocampal stress. So when we look at what are the barriers to communication, the first one is changes in the person themselves. But the next thing we ought to be looking at is the environment that I'm trying to do my communicating with, or in, or together. And people are easily distracted. They're distracted by noise. They're distracted by weird lighting. They're even distracted by their comfort. Like they made the mistake of sitting down on the couch, nowhere near any sort of armrest, and they're wondering, how am I ever going to get back up again? And they're just distracted. They're even distracted by movements. You've probably seen speakers who walk back and forth as they talk. I'm not doing that because pretty soon you'd be looking at my walk and my gait and what this is doing. And so if you do want to talk to someone who's older, and certainly someone with dementia, you want to try to stay still, distracted by movements. And if you're one of those people who says, I can't help it, a lot of cultures claim that they can't help it because their hands move. I can't help it. I'm such and such ethnicity. You know, it's your body. Get control of it. Because if I go like that, you're going to kind of look at my hand. We're trying to communicate with someone who's having trouble with being distracted. If the TV's on, it's not enough just to turn it down, because they'll still see movement and everything. Now, especially if you're in their house, you'll need to ask permission to turn off the TV, right? Because we want them to be whole and not hurt their ego. I'd probably blame myself, like, you know what? I get so distracted. Do you mind if I do that? Put it on you. Your shoulders are big enough to carry it. And then lighting. We want to have good enough lighting that they can see your face. There's a lot of people lip reading who don't even realize they're lip reading. And so it's good to be able to see your face. So barriers can be in the person. Barriers can be in the environment. Barriers can be in ourselves. We might be a different age than the person. And so they're thinking like, what could you possibly know? I'm the one who raised you. And just our different experiences. This one could deal with like professionals in their life who lived a completely different life than they did. Like, how can I connect with that home health aide who has whole different life experiences? If I'm a different ethnicity from the person, if I'm not as rich as they are, or if I'm richer than they are, those can be barriers. Not so much for family, but for. And then I can be causing distractions by doing things like talking too fast. I need to slow down. And you might say, I can't help it, I'm just someone who talks fast. You know, if I go to some fast food and say, I want a salad, you could tell that's what I mostly order, huh? Salads. I want a salad, and that sweet young thing says, that'll be blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking, okay, I have no idea what you said. Here's $5, I hope that covers it. We can't listen as fast. Those connections aren't as good. Well, the person you're trying to communicate with also can't listen as fast. And I need to slow down. I need to slow down. And dementia makes it worse. So, to communicate what the elders need, they need slower pacing. They need less stress. You can't make it like such a big deal. Like, you know, we have to pick out a new Medicare Part D, and they're getting a little overwhelmed. You need to notice that overwhelm and figure out how can I get around this. They need comfortable physical surroundings so they aren't distracted by their body. They need meaningfulness. Now that's an interesting one. Children don't need that. Children can learn any darn thing you want them to learn. Flee, fly, flow, fiesta, cum laude, festa. Oh, showing my age. And if you think about it, a baby might be born in rural China or downtown Toledo or the hills of France and wine country, and wherever they're born, they need to make sense out of their environment because it's all meaningless until you make meaning. And so children can learn like anything, no matter where you plant them. I know when I was teaching at BGSU, I would have students who were like 18 to 22, but BGSU has this program where people over 65 can go for free. So there'd be people over 65 in the class too. Well, and then there'd be people in their 40s. The young ones are like, pour it on in. Just tell me anything. How do you want it back? Do you want me to write a test? Do you want me to write an essay? What? Just pour it on in. The 40 and above would all be saying things like, but how does that work? Because I was in the store and I recently saw a lady who did such and such, and that seems to conflict with what you're telling me, because they're so full of knowledge already, they have to figure out how am I going to fit that in? What is the meaning? And they might reject what I have to say because it doesn't have meaning for them, or they could make room for it and say, okay, that makes sense. Older people need it to be meaningful. So if you're trying to teach them how to do their, I don't know, peritoneal dialysis at home, it might be meaningful if you say, this will keep you out of the nursing home. You know, this is meaningful. And then you need good health, actually, to be a great communicator. And so that's a barrier you may not have anything to do with, right? So what don't we do? We don't try to argue. We don't try to convince. We're not trying to reason. Why am I reasoning with someone who can't reason? I was in the hospital on an orthopedic floor. I had a thing with my foot, and I was there for a couple days. And across the hall were two women who all day, all night were throwing the F-bomb. And working where I do it, it didn't bother me. I was just more curious about like, what's going on? That behavior is happening. And I saw what was happening. This one was like super angry all the time. And this one was really frightened all the time. And the nurse would come in, and she would do things like, it's time for such and such. And this one would be going, well, the doctor wants you to it, given a reason. Well, who's he? Well, this is going to make you feel so much better. And she's out of control. The other one, it's time for such and such. Well, the doctor wants you to do this. It's going to make you feel so much. Well, one day, the angry one got out, and she was one of those people who walks at 90 degrees, you know. In fact, she was there because she had fallen and hurt her head. And so, of course, I got out of bed to look and see what's happening. I was just trying to learn. I'm not nosy. And I saw all these 9 people around her saying things like, you need to get back to your room. You're a fall risk. Do I have to call your son and call him up here? Did that calm her down? I saw my nurse was hanging back, and he had one of those computers on a stick, you know. And when he came in, I said, I have to compliment you for not joining that gang. He says, well, I would have, but I didn't know what to say. So I told him the very same thing I'm telling you. And in my remaining days in the hospital, he never had another problem again. Don't reason with someone who can't reason. Nevertheless, it's not like they fell off the cliff of reasoning. So I will give them one reason and see if they get it. But if they don't get it, stop. The handout that I gave you, and we can look at it later, was if you're being reasonable, rational, and logical, will just get you in trouble. Why am I reasoning with someone who can't reason? And so the angry one, time for such and such, give her one reason. Well, the doctor wants you, stop with the reasons. And just, I know, ever since you've been here, people have been bossing you around. We get to the truth of what's actually happening, right? I feel like I'm not somebody anymore. People are bossing me around. I want to be independent. I know, ever since you've been here, people have been, I'll tell you something, kiddo. You and me, as long as I'm with you, no one's bossing you. And we'll just get the frightened one, time for such and such. You know, well, the doctor wants, give her one reason. The doctor wants you to such, I can't. I know, this is really scary, isn't it? I just want you to know, I'm here with you. I'm by your side. We're going to get through this. So how do you translate that to home in the bathing? Time for such and such. Let's say one of those people are independent. Let's go back to the hippocampus again. Hippocampus is where you do your reasoning. You very reasonably said, you know, today's shower day, and this is a good time. I've got the whole bathroom all set up for you. They need to think it through. Do I need to shower? But their hippocampus is damaged, so they can't do the reasoning. They need you to do the reasoning, but they don't want you doing the reasoning. They want to do the reasoning, but they can't reason, so they need to reason, but they can't reason, and you're left with no. A lot of the no's come from people feeling humiliated and not being able to do their own reasoning. And now you've got a no in between you. Good luck getting past that. I know you've learned different strategies like, well, I just leave the bathroom and I come back a couple hours later and maybe we'll have a fresh start. And so you do have various strategies. It's not like no is the end of the world. But if someone feels humiliated and you've got that stress hormone of humiliation, I should be able to figure this out. But I can't figure this out. I need her to figure it out, but I don't want her figuring it out. It's all brain. It's not them being resistant and mean. It's brain damage, unless they were always like that. But oftentimes, no, this is a new behavior. We don't want to be bossy, same issue. We don't want to use a sharp tone of voice, same issue. Because now we're getting them excited. We want this hippocampus calm, 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 as calm as they can be. We don't want to be constantly correcting them, same issue. We don't want to use condescending tones, same issue. And we don't want to rush them, because we already talked about how you can't think as fast when you're older, and certainly when you have dementia. So the things I'm going to ask you to do seem to break communication. You've spent decades of your life trying to be more transparent and more honest and more open. And I'm going to ask you, don't. Which increases your stress. And now you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do with your stress. If you can't be reasoning and you can't be logical, you're going to have to, some people exercise, some people house clean, some people pray, some people meditate, some people talk with people who understand. And you're going to have to do something with your stress, because everything I'm going to ask you to do is not normal, not for those who try to be. You're going to try to create that environment that's free of distractions. We want to smile. That might be like the last thing in the whole world you want to do right now, and you have to do it anyway. We need them calm. Calm, calm, calm. We need to get in and approach them from the front. So rather than, let's say they're on the couch, you're coming in from the kitchen, and you start talking to somebody who you already know has trouble processing. I think sometimes what they're hearing when you're coming up behind them is like Charlie Brown's teacher. Rah, 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 rah. No, take the extra 1.5 seconds and get all the way in front of them. And get in front of them. Get their attention. Sometimes you have to do it multiple times. You can even see it. I'm going to give you a social work trick. This can make you lose respect for me because you'll think I'm a manipulative person, but you know, I may never see you again in my life, so I can handle it. You're talking to someone, just an older person or especially a person with dementia, and you see their eyes drift, they got distracted. One thing social workers will do, or what I'll do, is remember how I said movement can distract them? I might do something like, and they follow my hand right up to my lips. And now I've got their attention again. Or I might do something like move my body like this, and I get them back. Now, the cat's out of the bag if you do something like this. You're making a spectacle of yourself, and you've broken communication. But you can use movement to your advantage, you know. You can do these things on purpose, and you're thinking, why do you do it on purpose? But you're dealing with someone who's having trouble communicating. We need to try to stay in communion. And then obviously if you know them well enough to know they hear better out of one ear than the other, talk to that ear. And then I'll repeat myself again. I'll say, slow down. How slow could you go? I've been talking to you at about this pace. If you were 20, I'd probably be talking about this pace because the 20-year-olds kind of don't want to hear me talking that speed. But if I'm talking to someone with dementia or an older person, I might talk at about this pace, with some pauses in there to let those brain cells connect. And I'm doing it because they need me to. Now, if you want me to continue at this pace, I can if you want me to. I could do it for hours and have, or not. Literally slow down. And we're back to the, I can't help it, I'm someone who talks fast. Well, stop it. It's your body, get control of it. Now that you're aware about that whole brain connection thing, slow down. And then make your movements slow too, so you're not startling them. And then another way to slow everything down is to repeat yourself several times. Now, admittedly, we're trying to protect their ego, so you don't want to repeat yourself so much that you're insulting. Could you find a way to repeat yourself and bring the same thing out? Relax and let them feel safe. I really, really, really think a lot of people with dementia are frightened. The world has become something they don't understand. They're not understanding themselves, just like that one guy said. They don't even understand how to use the chair. I think lots of times, am I doing the right thing? Am I where I'm supposed to be? I want to go home, and they've lived there for 46 years. I think lots of times they don't feel safe, and they're frightened. So we want to, like, no matter what you do, you're safe with me. You're safe. It's okay. I even will use the word safe. Use a gentle tone of voice. Be unfailingly kind. So you could see why I said, I'm asking you to do unnatural things. Unnatural things. You've spent decades with this person building up how you communicate together. And now this dementia has come along and torn communication. And so you have to deliberately do things that are unnatural. And that does cause stress in you. And you'll have to figure out what you're going to do with that stress. But that's another talk. Back to that ego, always addressing them as an adult. So even if I speak slowly, I'm not going to get all sing-songy like, well, I'm trying to say that Part D Medicare, it's just a different animal. You know, okay, now you've created hippocampal stress. They're feeling insulted that you're talking all sing-songy and cute. Just slow down. Don't have to get cute. We want to be conversational, not inquisitional. So instead of asking them a whole bunch of questions, we'll just talk about the weather or something. Be patient, give them lots of time. Try to reduce the tension, anxiety. Be aware that they could be fearful. Be positive and reassuring. Interestingly, there's a male-female difference there. Women, you can praise till the cows come home. You almost can't praise us too much. Men, if you lay the praise on them, okay, I'm generalizing, I'm sorry. But men tend to, if you lay the praise on too heavy, they're a little bit like, ugh, like back off. But, so do be reassuring, do be positive. You're doing great, you're wonderful. And then say thank you. So many times people go through their whole lives as an older person and no one has ever thanking them for things. If they give you wisdom, if they give you advice, if they were a veteran or some other public servant, thanking them like, Mom, you were the one who gave me my work ethic. And I'm so grateful to how you stepped in and took care of the kids when I needed to go to work. Remind them who they are. Remind them that they're a person, that they're a somebody. You got me through raising my kids, or whatever it is. It needs to be something real, something sincere. And then respect their reality. So they're saying, I know they broke into my house last night and stole my purse, because I know where I put my purse. So thieves absolutely came in. So just like those people in the hospital will say, that must be really, well, first we reasoned with them once. I don't think anyone broke in because the door was locked when I got here. Oh, it was? Problem solved. Let's go look for your purse. But what if that doesn't work? That must be really scary to think of people in your house, and then whatever it is you're going to do. Let me look around and see if there's any evidence or anything. Be positive and hopeful that anybody can change, anybody can grow, even sick people can grow and change, and it really all comes down to respect. Thoughts, questions, discussion?
I think it's helpful, and I don't know people. I just knew one cousin's wife who had Alzheimer's, and she was aware of it when she was starting to lose it because her mother had it. She recognized it, but I wasn't around her. But had been other people with dementia, and my understanding is that Alzheimer's, if it's diagnosed for real, it's autopsy or invasive, whatever, that you don't do ordinary. So I've been around people with symptoms. I was thinking of my mom's sister when she was in the nursing home, and she would say when I visited her, she says, well, I don't know why I'm here, I have a home. I mean, really? Well, then she talked somebody into letting her out she was a walker, right? Out the front door. She says, I'm meeting somebody. And so a visitor opened the door because she seemed to make sense. Well, she wasn't supposed to be outside, and then she's lost.
Okay, you brought up like 4 different things, and I need to address them all if I can follow. She said she'd met people with Alzheimer's, a cousin had it, and then other people who have dementia. You don't know if it's Alzheimer's or not until autopsy. That's a separate discussion. Generally, doctors who've been around the block and they've seen a lot, they can be pretty clear about, is this vascular dementia? Is it Alzheimer's dementia? Is it Lewy body? But you're right, an autopsy would tell you for sure, maybe. And you also talked about a woman who got out because she seemed like a reasonable person. It's not like you've got like a broken arm that anyone could recognize there's something wrong with this person. You could look very reasonable and say reasonable things. So, yeah, it's an interesting issue. I think I've already missed something.
I did want to just finish up with the Good Samaritan Home in West Union, Iowa, put her in the new Alzheimer's unit. They call them memory care now, right? So there was one extra set of codes to get out and whatever. And her daughter, I was emailing back and forth, that she had family close to, but Sharon was saying, she says, I'm gonna call the doctor and have her take her out of that lockout unit. Well, I'd eaten lunch with her, with Mom, the Saturday before.
So let's talk about memory care units. If the statistics are, I'm sorry if you don't want to hear this, but the statistics are 86% of people who have dementia will end up their life in a facility. Even though you made all kinds of promises. I promised Dad that she would never. Statistics are against you unless you got 6 unemployed kids to help you out. And so should they be in a regular part of the nursing home or a specialized area called the memory care unit? And I hate it when even the marketers call it the lockup unit, as if the emphasis were on the door instead of what's happening behind the door. So they'll call it a memory care unit. It's about care, people have memory. It depends. If the person is, and I gotta say something very sad, near the end of their life, and they're kind of just like living in a lazy boy, their eyes half open, what benefit are they getting out of a memory care unit? They probably would be better in the skilled care part, someone who can take care of their body and everything. But if they want lots of activity and stuff that's geared towards memory care, some nursing homes have figured out how to do dementia care for everybody. And to tell the truth, if you've got great communication and great activities, we all benefit. Any of us could use that. And so they might just have like a wander guard on someone's ankle, that if you get close to the door is gonna lock. So memory care unit or not memory care unit, it varies from person to person. And I was supposed to talk 45 minutes, it's now been 46. And so we're ready for it.
The point, though, that I wanted to make was that I told Sharon, I said, I think that would be a mistake, because Aunt Ruth said, I don't know why I'm here. I have 2 other homes.
That's what it reminded me.
Right.
So the communication of people who are saying, like they're in a facility or they're in your house and they keep saying, I want to go home. I find I want to go home almost like poetry, like people with dementia speak poetry. You know, when you read a poem or a religious tract or something, or Bible or Quran, and you read it and you say, oh, okay, I get it. And then someone else reads it and it gets a little bit deeper, and then you go to a class about it and it gets even deeper. I want to go home is that kind of poem. On one hand, it's, I don't belong here. I want to go to 123 Main Street where I'm comfortable. But a deeper thought is, well, some people are talking about, I want to go home, like heaven. But sometimes they're saying, I want my life back. I'm not living my life. I want to go home. Now, even if you were to take them to 123 Main Street and they couldn't survive there, they're yearning and aching to go back home. I want to go back to a place where I understood everything that was around me, how to use it, where I fit, how I want to go home. So reasoning doesn't seem like the thing to do, like, you are home. You are home. No, I'm not. I'm not home because I'm not comfortable. I don't have my life back. And so then we communicate by saying, like, I know this is really hard, isn't it? I wish this wasn't happening to us. I'm using the word us. We're in communion, we're in communication. I wish this wasn't happening to us. It's really hard on you and hard on me. I just want you to know I'm with you. I'm with you.
And after we ate, she didn't want to visit very long. She says, I guess I'll go home now. And she went to her room.
Because you get more comfortable once you've been living there.
And her room in the memory care unit was home now.
So thank you. Those were all great comments. And lunch is here, so we need to do that. Great, thanks.